Hi everyone, A&P Adventures here. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Aaron.
And we're glad you're with us. Today we're going to show you a little bit of Central Park. This is number 3 in our Central Park series, and we're excited to show it off to you.
We call this one all about the arts. We're going from museum to museum and crossing through the park and showing off some of the art institutions involved in this area. It is Wednesday, May 10th, 2023.
Yeah.
It is 22 degrees Celsius, 71 degrees Fahrenheit.
Beautiful
it is a
day.
Gorgeous day. And we're excited to show off this part of the park. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Here we go. All right, so we're starting right over here on Central Park West, kind of near 79th Street roughly, in front of the American Museum of Natural History. This museum has 27 now.
Yeah.
27 interconnected buildings, 45 permanent exhibition halls, planetarium, a library. Teddy Roosevelt was one of the founders of this museum, which originally opened in the park in 1869. You can see if you look down to that southern end of it, it's got a little bit of a different look to it. That's kind of in the Victorian Gothic style. It's by Calvert Vaux and J. Ray Mould, who worked on the park with Olmsted and Vaux. Calvert Vaux, one of our 2 Central Park designers who we'll talk about in just a little bit. But as we come back to this center area, you can see that the museum has had quite a few additions over the years. The main entrance is in the Beaux-Arts style by John Russell Pope. That was done in 1936. There's an annex in the back that just opened literally last week to the tune of $350 million. This museum is known for the model of the giant blue whale, 94 feet long or 29 meters, many outstanding fossil displays, and probably one of our favorite parts of this museum is their origami Christmas tree, where all the ornaments are made of origami to highlight museum exhibitions. So check this museum out when you come, because it's a pretty fantastic museum that'll keep you busy all day long.
It really is. That new entrance that Aaron is talking about, we're on Central Park West right now, and the new entrance is on Columbus. So it's just on the back side of this building.
Now, we mentioned this was originally located inside the park, so let's go inside the park.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so we're entering right here, literally directly across the street from the museum. Again, it's a beautiful day to take a walk in the park, so I'm glad you all joined us. And as we make our way in, I just want to mention the Central Park Conservancy, because they don't get as much credit as they should. But the Central Park Conservancy is a private, not-for-profit organization. It was established in 1980 by New Yorkers who were saddened to see that the park's integrity and beauty had declined. And so they set up this organization in order to basically save the park and renew it to what they wanted, what the park's original intentions were meant to be. And they have an annual budget of about $80 million in order to keep the park up to its current standards. A vast majority of that money comes through private donations. All right, now as we approach these paths, you're going to see 2 of them side by side right here. This first one is a little bit more, has a bit more gravel on it. You're also going to see parked right next to it some of the Central Park Conservancy trucks that the organization we were just talking about. But this gravel path is 6.1 miles long, just under 10 kilometers. And it's a dirt and gravel path that is known as the bridle path. So horseback riding in Central Park is indeed permitted. Good luck finding a horse these days. You don't see them quite as much.
Yeah, there used to be a riding academy on the Upper West Side called Claremont. I think that was on 89th Street, yeah. And that has shut down, so we don't see as many horses on the bridle path anymore. But you know, when the school was there, we saw lots of classes with horse riding classes using the bridle path. So it's a shame we don't see as many horses on the bridle path, but it does still exist, which is nice.
And it's still very popular for joggers because it's a softer path than the rest of it. Now, where we're headed, what we're looking at right now, looks like a bunch of trees and shrubs, but if we were to peek down, you're going to see some traffic flowing through Central Park that we as pedestrians or joggers wouldn't necessarily even notice or see, especially in the summertime when things are green. But those are known as the traverses, and there are 4 of them. There's one at 65th, 79th, 86th and 97th, and they are intended to help traffic move east and west or vice versa through the park, but they are cleverly disguised.
They are. I love that we don't even notice them. As you're walking through the park, you can meander through and not even notice the traffic going through the park.
Now here we are at the Swedish Cottage Marionette Theater. So this was imported to the United States in 1876 as Sweden's exhibit for the Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia, and it was originally designed as a prefabricated schoolhouse. And it caught the eye of one of our park's designers, Olmsted, who we just mentioned oh so briefly a little bit ago, but he'll come up again in a bit. He was at the Philadelphia Exposition in 1877 when he noticed this building and thought it might be a nice addition to the park. It's had quite a few uses over the years. It was a tea room for a while, a nature educational center. But since 1947, it's been home to a marionette theater troupe. They put on productions such classics as Peter Pan, Cinderella, and quite a few more. And not only do they do performances here, but they also have a puppet mobile. The mobile is not a puppet, actually. It's a real van.
There's also short-term lodging for our feathered friends, as you can see.
Oh, I'm seeing like 4 nests at least. There's probably more around the building as well. It was restored in 1996, by the way, but it still contains quite a bit of its original material. And right directly across the path from that is the entrance to Shakespeare Garden. Now, if you've enjoyed some of our other Central Park tours before, on some of them we've mentioned the rustic fences. A lot of the rustic fences, especially in this area, and not the entire park doesn't have these fences, but a lot of them, they try to use wood from the park, maybe a tree that's fallen or a tree that they have to take down for whatever reason. They'll try to salvage some of that wood for these fences. But here we go into the Shakespeare Garden. So throughout this garden, Bard fans will recognize flowers that are highlighted in his work. And next to those flowers, you'll see bronze plaques that indicate the relevant text. So this little garden was created in 1913, and it was created at the request of our parks commissioner at the time, Charles Stover. Here you can see some rose bushes, and right below them, that bronze plaque. What's in a name that which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet? So Charles Stover was a massive Shakespeare fan, and he had an office in the Swedish Cottage at the time. And so the idea was that he could look out from his office window and see this beautiful garden that's evocative of the Bard's countryside. It's relatively small. It's only about 4 acres. About 1.6 hectares. I see lots of bees enjoying the alliums there. We're just at the tail end of the tulips, but you still see a little bit of them. But it's kind of perfect. Just as the tulips fade, the alliums come in.
Oh, we love those alliums. They're like Dr. Seuss.
They are.
Flowers.
Totally. Now, it is a prime destination in large part because in the spring, because of all the bulbs that are planted here. So the tulips that come in, and of course the alliums that we're just seeing, the daffodils, although we're after the daffodil season now. But it's still beautiful all throughout the summertime as well. working sundial right there in the middle of the garden. So if you're walking through the park and you're curious to know what time it is, just head over to the Shakespeare Garden. Also, if you need a little break, at the very top of the hill from the Shakespeare Garden is this bench right here dedicated to Charles Stover, who we were just mentioning is who requested that the Shakespeare Garden be implemented. And this is known as the Whisper Bench. And it's known as that because if you have two people coming over to the bench and you sit on either end of it and you whisper into the little nook of the bench, it'll carry to the other side, the curve of the bench. It's will just kind of take that sound right over. It's sort of like the
whispering
wall at Grand Central. Now you might have caught a sneak peek in the back there of Belvedere Castle, and that's where we're headed next. All right, and here you see up on the hill, Belvedere Castle. This was envisioned by Calvert Vaux in 1869. Now, originally it was planned to be an outdoor viewing pavilion, which this part of it still is, but you'll see when we get to the top that there's an indoor section as well. And that indoor section has a little bit of a gift shop in there, as well as an information booth, a visitor center. And there's also inside a little small winding staircase that you can climb for an even greater view at the top of the terrace. Belvedere in Italian means beautiful view, and indeed we'll get some beautiful views up here. Now this is all made from Manhattan schist, quarried from the park. It's kind of the bedrock of Manhattan. And it's built on a rock that originally was known as Vista Rock. So prior to the castle, there was a fire tower in this location. They really should call it Belvedere Folly, because it's not a castle, it's a folly, a fanciful open-air structure that really serves no purpose. But it kind of does have a bit of a purpose, and that was to lure viewers into the park even further. Originally, this would have been seen from further locations in the park because the trees wouldn't be in full bloom or full maturity yet. Now this is Turtle Pond you're seeing here at the base of Belvedere Castle. The great lawn there in the distance with a big softball field in the middle. We'll discuss why this is called Turtle Pond coming up. But you can see on this beautiful day how many people are out enjoying the park.
Oh yeah, the joint is jumping, as they say.
Now we also get a view from up here of the Delacorte Theater where Shakespeare in the Park happens. So we'll make our way down there. I think they're getting ready for this season's production of Hamlet. I think it starts performances in just a few weeks. And I see some of the set being built right now. In fact, I even see some of the crew down there working on it. Now the Delacorte Theater is the free Shakespeare in the Park theater right here in Central Park. And those are the seats you're seeing there in the distance.
Whoa.
So we're essentially backstage right now.
Yeah, that's right, we are. It is really cool to come and see a show at the Delacorte Theater because it's an open-air theater and you see the beautiful Central Park as the backdrop for most of the shows that are performed there.
So, shall we head back up?
Yeah.
And what do you say? Should we climb to the top of the terrace today?
Sure, let's do it.
I love going up there. If you're climbing up to Belvedere Castle, take the extra time, right? And go.
Absolutely, especially on a nice day like today.
Two more little fun facts about Belvedere Castle as we descend the castle steps. Number one is that it's air conditioned inside. So if it's a hot summer day and you're coming to visit and you need a little reprieve, head into the castle. And number two, since 1919, the National Weather Service has actually collected meteorological data from the top of the castle. So if you're watching the news and they say what the temperature is in New York or what the weather's like, they're getting it from right there, the top of Belvedere Castle.
That's great.
All right, so at the base of the Belvedere Castle is the Delacorte Theater. So the Delacorte Theater, which we pointed out from above, is the open-air venue that houses the Public Theater's annual Shakespeare in the Park. So Joseph Papp, P-A-P-P, founded his Shakespeare workshop in 1954. And in 1960, they started performing on the lawn in front of the Belvedere Castle. 1962, the Delacorte Theater was born. The first production in that new theater was The Merchant of Venice, starring George C. Scott and James Earl Jones. It's named in honor of Valerie and George Delacorte, who funded the structure. And it has 1,800 free seats for the summer productions.
I just love pointing out this little cottage here. Looks like a little house in the woods that someone would want to live off the grid, but the truth is these are public restrooms. So they're the restrooms that people that go to see shows at the Delacorte Theater use, and of course on everyday occasions, people just using the park can use these public restrooms. But I love that it looks like a little cottage in the woods.
Fits in perfectly.
Yeah.
And right next to that little cottage in the woods, if we were to keep going straight down this path, we're going to turn right. But if we were to go straight, this is exactly where folks line up for Shakespeare in the Park tickets when they come to wait in line for those. Now they also have a virtual queue and a lottery system, but the old school way is to get here early in the morning. The park opens at 6 a.m. and if it's a popular show, because oftentimes there are Hollywood celebrities in it, we've had over the years Denzel Washington, Meryl Streep, Al Pacino, Patrick Stewart all performing here.
And because of that, you'll see sometimes on a really popular show, this path is just lined with people waiting to try to get free tickets for that show.
Now typically the theater does 2 productions a summer, and then they'll have a community production at the end where they bring in Broadway professionals as well as community performance groups to perform a specific Shakespeare piece. I believe that one's called Public Works. But then in addition to those shows, they also oftentimes have concerts in that venue as well. And as we make our way around the other side of it, you'll see these 2 statues that are perfect homages to Shakespeare. We've got Romeo and Juliet, a gift of George Delacorte. Again, the namesake of the theater. And then the Tempest right next to that statue as well. All right, so ahead of us is the Great Lawn. 55 acres, 22 hectares. Originally, this was a reservoir for the Croton Aqueduct system that would carry fresh water from the Croton River in Westchester to the city. And that reservoir was decommissioned in 1931. The upper part still remains, the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis Reservoir, which is just on the other side of the trees up ahead. And this area was filled in to become the lawn, the Great Lawn. And as you can see perfectly today, it is noted for its sunbathers, for its softball players, kite flyers, picnickers. It has 8 ball fields used by quite a few different city leagues. And this is also home to some of the hottest concerts in the city. Diana Ross performed here, Elton John, Simon and Garfunkel, Garth Brooks, the Metropolitan Opera and the New York Philharmonic. They hold free concerts here every year. It's a terrific event. Usually has fireworks at the end of it too.
Yeah.
We like coming to see the Philharmonic with the fireworks. right, so we just left the Great Lawn area. We're just a smidge south of it, and we're making our way over here to the King Jagiełło Monument. So the Grand Duke of Lithuania united Lithuania and Poland and became king after marrying the Queen of Poland in 1386. And this statue depicts a moment in the Battle of Grunwald in 1410, when the king raised the two swords handed to him by his adversaries. Now, this bronze sculpture originally stood at the Polish Pavilion at the 1939 World's Fair in Flushing, Queens. But the statue was unable to return home after the fair because of the Nazis' invasion of Poland. So the exiled Polish government gifted this sculpture to the city of New York in 1945 as a symbol of Polish courage. King Jagiełło. And as we pivot away from that statue, we'll see we're on the far end of Turtle Pond right now that we were discussing above when we were up at Belvedere Castle. Turtle Pond has 5 species of turtles: the box, snapping, musk, red-eared, sliders, and painted. And when the weather turns cold, they burrow into the mud for the season to return when it gets warmer, and you can see they've come back in full force. Now, this was not originally intended to be one of the water features in the park. This is a little bit left over from the Croton Reservoir that we were talking about. When they filled it in, this little area remained. So this is our newest body of water in the park. And they are really enjoying it today.
Oh, yeah,
sunbathing.
Yeah.
I hope they put sunscreen on. All right, making our way from Turtle Pond and the King Jagiełło Monument, we come down this path right by those 2 locations, and you'll start to see a very odd sight coming into view, which is this giant obelisk, sort of unsuspecting, right here in the park. Also known as Cleopatra's Needle. It's over 3,000 years old, 69 feet high or 21 meters, weighs 220 tons. It's one of 2 obelisks commissioned around 1450 BC to commemorate the pharaoh's 30th year of reign, and each was carved from a single slab of quarried rose granite. They stood for 1,500 years before being toppled in war and left to ruin, and both were discovered in 18 AD. They were moved to Alexandria and erected in front of Cleopatra's Colosseum, thus the name Cleopatra's Needle. Now, at that time, the limestone corners and the bronze crabs you're going to see coming into view coming up here were added to the corners because the base was worn down. And the crabs, which are lit so perfectly for us today, those claws, they were chosen for their role in Roman mythology. They're associated with Apollo and the sun, thereby in keeping with Egyptian tradition. So Egypt gifted one of the obelisks to the city of London in 1878. It still stands on the banks of the Thames. And the second was gifted to the United States as a thank you for its friendly neutrality during some sticky business between Egypt and European powers. It took 112 days for the obelisk to arrive. To perform this daunting task, former Navy Commander Henry Honeychurch Gorringe transported the structure in the hold of a steamship. And after its arrival, 32 horses were hitched in 2s, and it was hauled from the Hudson River and carried across a custom-built bridge and erected right across from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where we're going to end our tour here in just a little bit. And it was erected on January 22nd, 1881. There's a time capsule underneath the obelisk, and in that is an 1870 U.S. Census, a Bible, a Webster's Dictionary, the complete works of William Shakespeare, which makes perfect sense since the Shakespeare in the Park is not too far away, a guide of Egypt, and a copy of the Declaration of Independence. And just a stone's throw away from Cleopatra's Needle, you'll see this statue right here of Alexander Hamilton, carved from solid granite by Carl H. Conrads. This was donated to the park in 1880 by one of Alexander's sons, John. Alexander Hamilton was, of course, our first Secretary of Treasury, co-author of the Federalist Papers, and a delegate to the Constitutional Convention. Quite a notable New Yorker. In fact, we even have a neighborhood named after him, Hamilton Heights. And of course, he lost his life in a duel with Aaron Burr and is buried in Lower Manhattan by Trinity Church. And of course, there's now the Broadway musical, Hamilton, named after him. So we're going to make our way over to the front of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We're going from museum to museum today. And as we make our way over there, I'll tell you the history of the park. So the park is 843 acres or 340 hectares. The perimeter is approximately 6 miles or about 9.5 kilometers. That's about 2.5 miles or about 4 kilometers from end to end, north to south. About a half a mile or about 0.8 of a kilometer east to west. That's sort of the walk we've been doing today. It sees 38 million visitors a year, 58 miles of path. You might hear that dog barking. Yes, indeed, dogs are allowed in the park, although they have to remain on their leashes after 9 a.m. Thanks for enjoying our tour. 93 kilometers of path, 58 miles, 8 bodies of water, 36 bridges, 21 playgrounds, 9,000 benches, 26,000 trees in the park. It's bigger than the country of Monaco, and it is indeed a living work of art. It was entirely sculpted and crafted by Olmsted and Vaux. They were one of 33 in a design competition. The city had overdeveloped, and they hadn't really included green space in their plans. And there was a great public outcry for there to be a public green space. And so the idea of Central Park was born. The first part of the park opened in 1858, and the park was ultimately completed in 1876, although it's still a work in progress. I mean, in fact, if you look at the older pictures of the park, it looks nothing like what we see today, obviously, because of the maturity of trees and the evolution of the park. But it is indeed New Yorkers' backyard.
Oh yeah, New York, the playground for New Yorkers for sure.
I mean, in fact, it has a zoo, a carousel, the softball fields that we saw. It's known for its jogging, biking, hiking. Yes, indeed, there is hiking in the park if you go to the northern part of it. It's open from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. So here we are on the side of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. This particular glass wall we're seeing right here, inside there is the Temple of Dindor, an ancient Egyptian temple built by the Roman governor of Egypt, Petronius, around 15 BC. It was given to the Met in the 1960s. One of the most grand halls to visit in the Met.
Also, if you know the movie When Harry Met Sally, they filmed a scene right there behind that glass, looking out. You can see it's Central Park. I also love how this playground right across the street is in the same style as the Egyptian. You see pyramids, and the playground is themed that way. Really fun.
Which is sort of the case around New York City. For the most part, playgrounds and subway stations.
Yeah.
Are
indicative to the surroundings.
To the area. So we're almost to Fifth Avenue now. And we will round the corner here at Fifth and make our way down in front of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And here it is, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, although everybody calls it the Met.
Oh yeah.
Established in 1870, it's the largest art museum in the United States. This building opened in 1872. The original building was designed by Calvert Vaux and his collaborator Jacob Ray Mould. Originally in the high Victorian Gothic style, although it's had several additions over the years, most notably 1909 by McKim, Mead and White. So now it has a little bit more of a Beaux-Arts look to it. But it is Not only the largest art museum in the United States, but it is also one of the grandest institutions in New York City. It can be overwhelming. Pick a section.
Oh yeah, I call this the Cadillac of museums in New York City. This is my favorite museum, but it can certainly be overwhelming. Pick 2 or 3 things that you really want to see and go see those things and then call it a day so you don't get museum exhaustion.
So we're going to end our tour over here today. We hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful day.
What a gorgeous day in the park. Listen, if you find yourself with some extra time, just go get lost in Central Park. Stroll around, meander around. You'll never be bored. It is a glorious, glorious park. And while not New York City's largest park, it is, I think, probably the best park.
Yeah.
With lots of things to find and discover along the way.
So great indeed that we split it up into different sections. So if you just stumbled on this video, we have other segments of the park that we show off. So you can certainly find that playlist on our channel, our YouTube page, and check out those other videos. Give us a like. Subscribe to us if you enjoy it, and click that bell to get some notifications, and maybe leave a comment. What was your favorite thing you saw on today's adventure through the park?
Let us know what you liked.
I'm Aaron.
And I'm Patrick, and we are A&P Adventures.
Thanks for joining us.